Hello, friends. I am Yolanda Harper. I am co-founder of Harper Therapy. And today I'm with Jennifer Schapp, who
Hi.
is dialing in from home during this COVID-19 social distancing thing that we got going on. How are you doing today, Jen?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
We're hanging in there, but I think that we are all kind of over this, right? We are all over being stuck at home, trying to find creative ways of passing time, finding different ways of exercising and working out when things are shut down, being
Yes.
in the four walls of our homes with our partners 24/7, which highlights any kind of challenges in the relationship that might have been there. They're just exponentially, more difficult now, I
Yeah.
would say,
Yeah.
right?
A
Yeah.
lot of time with your partner.
Yeah.
A lot of us time.
Yeah, yeah. And I think so, that some of the couples work that we do is the Gottman method, but then also RLT, relational life therapy. And our mentor in that work is Terry Real, and he describes the relationship as a biosphere, right? And I think that's especially true during these times. Like our relationship is a biosphere, and we don't want toxicity in our biosphere, right?
Yeah, no, that's not helpful at all.
But you have some tips for us today from John and Julie Gottman's work. They're the gurus in couples therapy, and just to kind of wrap some words around some ways that we might be communicating with our partners in our relationships that aren't super helpful.
Yeah, exactly. So I just noticed that for example, for me for this week, my husband's an essential worker. So he works at a hospital. But this week he is home all week. So now I'm kind of having to learn what it feels like to be with your partner 24/7. And I love him.
Yeah.
But I just noticed that being together for basically nonstop, it can be challenging, even as us being two therapists. So I was thinking probably other couples out there are probably struggling and maybe kind of getting into those conversations that are just circular. Whenever I have clients come in, I would say the main thing they complain about, or like a common theme, is we just go in circles. We just don't get things resolved and it just blows up. And I loved Gottman's Four Horsemen that I wanted to share today because I feel like these are really good, concrete ways to kind of identify maybe some negative communication patterns you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. And if you followed Harper Therapy for a while, you know that we talked about the Four Horsemen before, but this is a special COVID-19 edition of the Four Horsemen
Yes.
of apocalyptic communication styles. So tell us what these Four Horsemen are, Jen.
So the first one I want to talk about was criticism. So this is attacking your partner's personality. And an example I can think of is probably cleaning is maybe something that comes up a lot. So I can see how this one could apply to that. So this would be like, you're so lazy, you never do the dishes, you never clean up. And the reason this isn't helpful is because obviously it's going to hurt your partner's feelings and make them defensive. So an alternative way that I would encourage you to kind of communicate during this time is using more of I statements, coming from a feelings perspective, noticing needs that you're needing to be met. Like, I'm feeling overwhelmed with all the dishes. Could I get some help, please? And I feel like this is a good one because a lot of times couples don't even realize that they're sometimes being critical. They think they're just asking. They're like, I'm just asking for what I need, but it's let's explore how are you asking for that need being met?
Yeah, it's kind of like what our mamas always said. It's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it.
Exactly. So I assume being cooped up during this time together, this one may be coming out a little bit.
Yeah. And here's one that I found myself using this morning, which was a little surprising for me. Like, I'm feeling lonely, which is really ironic, right? Because we're in this space together. And how do you feel lonely being cooped up 24/7 together? But that, when we're coming from an emotional state and an I statement, that's an example.
Yeah, no, that makes sense because you can feel lonely because you're only really with the same person.
Yeah.
I'm sure, like, I'm craving, like, human interaction outside of my partner.
Outside of you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the first of the four horsemen. What else?
The next one's contempt. So contempt gets a little bit, I guess, a little bit more serious because this is more like attacking someone's sense of self. Like it's with the intent of trying to hurt them. So
Mhm.
this is the one that I always call like when you're going into an argument or you're going into a conversation and what your purpose is to like make the other person feel how you're feeling or like
Mhm.
just like insult them. And
Mhm.
like an example of this would be like you're a bad person, you're an extremely lazy person who's not going to count anything. Like those are just very mean things, but
Yeah.
I know with like the high tension going on and maybe the
Mhm.
additional stress people are experiencing, it might be that because of their own emotions, they might start going to more of these mean places. I know sometimes we kind of act out when we're experiencing a lot of a negative emotions.
Yeah, it comes out sideways, right? Especially when we're not kind of aware of it for ourselves. I think that this is the emotional equivalent of bringing like a nuclear weapon to, a disagreement, right?
Yes, and, like, it may be that, like, you've been with your partner, like, all week or for weeks now, and it's, like,
Right.
hard to see the positives, but what I always encourage people to do, because this one can sometimes border on being, like, abusive if it, like, is definitely one-sided, is to, like, recognize the positives that your partner encompasses. So
Mhm.
remind yourself, like, "I really like how my partner always, like, pours coffee for me or really makes an attempt to make sure that I'm feeling okay or checking in with me." Like I like to remind yourself, like, oh, what are all the positives my partner is doing? I just
Yeah.
really like to pull from that positivity place with a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes we have to dig deep for that positive perspective, but it's there because that's part of what drew you together to begin with, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
the important thing about the content piece is that with the Gottman's research, that's the one that they find most correlated, most highly correlated with like the relationship ending with that contempt piece ongoing. So it's something that you want to pay attention to and be active towards, kind of putting things in a different perspective.
Yes, definitely. The next one is defensiveness. And
Hmm.
this one probably is really common. We like as I feel like as humans don't like to admit when we're wrong. And defensiveness is like putting on maybe what the other person did wrong. Like they tell you like, oh, you always do this, and you go back and go, well, you always do this. Like kind of like not accepting blame or not
Hmm.
accepting responsibility for your
Hmm.
actions.
Hmm.
Again, this can be small household tasks like you did this, and then the next person's like, well, you always do this, and
Hmm.
it just builds and builds. And the reason that this is not effective is because no communication is really being happened. I kind of just like imagine like everyone's just throwing mud back and
Hmm.
forth until you're both just sticky and exhausted, and you just go
Yeah.
separate ways.
Yeah. Yeah. And these are those types of conversations where you're like, how are we arguing about the way that we load the dishwasher? Like, how is that an argument?
Exactly, and
Yeah.
that's what I, like, thought, like, this is perfect for COVID-19 because, like,
Right.
probably most of your arguments are over small things, like, loading the dishwasher is a perfect one, cleaning,
Yeah.
um, who's, like, taking if you have dog, who walked the dog last, like, just
Right.
all these small things that can just build up. Um,
Yeah.
so, like, what I encourage you to do during this time is, like, if you recognize that you did something that maybe hurt your partner's feelings or something where, like, you didn't contribute, acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
Own
know,
it.
we're human. We're gonna
Yeah.
make mistakes. And this can kind of help your partner also acknowledge their mistakes that they made because they're gonna recognize like, oh, she's being humble, she's like actually listening to how I'm feeling, or vice
Yeah.
versa. So I think this is just a good one to keep in mind during this time as
It
well.
reduces some of that toxicity in the biosphere. Right. So we have got criticism, we've got contempt, we've got defensiveness, we have one more.
And the last one is stonewalling.
Uh-huh.
So this one I also see a lot of. This is just like
Hmm.
avoiding conversation,
Hmm.
purposely putting barriers up, leaving the room, and people just for different reasons. It may be because like you are trying to avoid conflict, or it may be because you're actually trying to show your partner that you're mad at them. And I'm sure this is happening in many households across America because I'm sure people get in arguments and the other person just goes into the other room and shuts the door.
Mhm.
And I think this can just happen over small things as well. The build up, the repetition, just getting in those like cycles, and just so recognizing that like we're all trying to get our needs met, and it may be at this time you need to take a time out. Maybe it's you need to take a deep breath and remind yourself your partner is trying to communicate, trying to just solve the issue, and just realizing, am I doing this out of anger or am I doing this out of like I need some space? And if that's the case, you can just say, kind of like my last video, like, hey, I need a timeout. I need 10 minutes. I need 30 minutes just to like recenter myself, and let's continue this conversation when I'm feeling more calm.
Right, right. When everybody's more calm and we can set up this conversation for success and actually hearing each other instead of arguing and being defensive and critical and all of the other things.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome, awesome. Well, is there anything else about the four horsemen that you would like to share with us today?
I think that's it. I think just like normalizing that arguments happen, and this is just a good framework to kind of look at and like notice. I just love having labels for certain types of communication and things just so I can notice them and be like, oh, I'm pulling from criticism right now. I'm pulling from stonewalling. So just notice what's going on in your relationship and just like, take some of the more pro type of actions from it. And it doesn't mean that your relationship is over because you guys are arguing. Just wanted to
Right.
know that as well.
Yeah, totally. I remember when I was training in the Gottman method and when I learned about the four horsemen and I was able to like pinpoint, oh my gosh, that's contempt. Wow. I understand what's happening now. And I know that there's an antidote for this. I know that there's another way of doing it. So yeah, so this is great tools for us as we are in this COVID environment where we are just in this space together so much. So thank you for giving us labels and normalizing what we're experiencing and kind of giving us some other ways of looking at things, Jen. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah, so we appreciate you guys in our community for watching. And if you have found this video helpful in saying, oh, now I understand better what's happening in my house, I guarantee you that there are friends of yours, family members who are having similar experiences. So please share this so that they can have a better understanding of what's happening in their households too. And thanks for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves and let's take good care of each other. Have a good
Bye.
day.